I remember the night clearly, though I have tried to forget it countless times. The house was silent, wrapped in the kind of heavy stillness that only settles after midnight. My mother's bedroom door was closed, and I knew she had gone to bed hours earlier. I should have been asleep too, but rest wouldn't come. The walls of my room felt suffocating, the shadows too restless, the ceiling fan too loud. Something in me longed for distraction, and so I slipped out of bed and crept down the hallway toward my father's room. The door was ajar, letting out a thin stream of light. The glow of the television pulsed faintly across the floor, accompanied by the soft murmur of dialogue. It felt like a secret portal, an invitation meant only for me. I hesitated, hand hovering at the edge of the doorframe, before pushing it open a little farther. Inside, my father sat reclined against the headboard, remote in hand, a glass of water resting on the nightstand. The blue light of the screen painted his face in shifting tones, sometimes sharp, sometimes soft. He turned his head when he noticed me, his expression caught between surprise and amusement. "Can't sleep?" he asked, voice low, almost conspiratorial. I shook my head. "No. Thought maybe I could watch with you." He patted the space beside him, and I climbed onto the bed. The sheets smelled faintly of his cologne, sharp, clean, and distinct. I tucked my legs beneath me, trying to appear casual, though inside I felt both comforted and strangely self-conscious. We didn't speak for a while. The movie on the screen played out a story I barely followed. My attention was divided, half on the film, half on the atmosphere of the room. The darkness beyond the glow of the screen seemed thicker than usual, pressing against us. The silence between us was not empty but charged, carrying a weight I could not name. When my father reached for the remote to adjust the volume, his arm brushed against mine. It was nothing, an accident, surely, but my pulse quickened. I shifted slightly, though not far enough to break the closeness. He noticed, or at least I thought he did, and his eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than necessary. "You always liked watching movies with me," he said softly, almost as if speaking to himself. I nodded. "It feels different in here. Safer." The words left my mouth before I could think them through. Safer. Did I mean it, or was it simply what I wanted to believe? My father smiled faintly, though his eyes seemed to study me with unusual intensity. The film carried on, flickering across the room. A chase scene filled the silence, but it could not drown out the awareness building between us. I felt every shift of the mattress, every breath he took. My skin prickled as though the air itself had changed, grown denser, more difficult to move through. I told myself I was only there to watch a movie, nothing more. I repeated it like a prayer. Just a movie, just a movie, just a movie. But the words sounded hollow, as if even my mind refused to believe them. At one point, I turned to glance at him. He wasn't watching the screen anymore. His gaze was fixed on me, steady and unblinking. The look unsettled me, yet I could not turn away. It was as if we were suspended in that moment, caught in an invisible current pulling us somewhere neither of us had planned to go. Finally, I broke the silence. "Do you think Mom would mind if she knew I was here?" The question hung in the air like smoke. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back, exhaled slowly, and said, "Some things don't need to be shared." The words struck me with an odd mixture of comfort and dread. They sounded like permission, but also like warning. I clutched the blanket, trying to steady myself, but the truth was undeniable. This was no ordinary movie night. The credits eventually rolled, though I couldn't have explained the plot if someone had asked. My mind was elsewhere, caught in the undercurrents of everything left unsaid. As the screen faded to black, the room grew darker still, the silence deeper. I realized then that crossing the hallway into his room had been more than an innocent choice. It was the first step towards something that could never be undone. The room didn't empty of its weight when the movie ended. If anything, the silence grew louder, pressing into me with a heaviness that made my chest tighten. I stayed seated, staring at the blank screen, though I knew I should have risen and slipped back into the safety of my own room. Something, curiosity, defiance, or perhaps a need I could not admit, rooted me to the mattress. My father shifted beside me. The movement was small, but I felt it as though the bed itself transmitted every vibration directly into me. When his arm stretched along the back of the headboard, it came close enough that I could sense the warmth radiating from his skin. Not a touch, not yet, but the distance between us thinned until it became another kind of contact. "You're quiet," he said finally. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. He chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. "Sometimes it's better that way." His words unsettled me, yet they also drew me deeper. Silence no longer felt like an absence but like an exchange, filled with meanings neither of us dared to voice. I became acutely aware of every sound, the hum of the television as it shifted to static, the faint creak of the ceiling fan, the rhythm of his breathing. The ordinary became unbearable, every detail magnified into significance. I thought of leaving again. My legs twitched with the urge to rise, but when I shifted, his hand brushed against mine. It was light, perhaps accidental, but he didn't withdraw. Neither did I. The contact lingered, fragile and dangerous, like a thread stretched between us. "Cold?" he asked, though I wasn't. I shook my head, yet I didn't move my hand away. The silence after that question became heavier than words. My heart pounded so hard I wondered if he could hear it. I stared at the wall, pretending to study the framed photo of some long-forgotten holiday, but my thoughts had already betrayed me. The air between us pulsed with possibility, and fear, and something else I didn't want to name. He shifted again, and this time his shoulder pressed lightly against mine. The pressure was deliberate. My breath caught, but I didn't recoil. Instead, I let the closeness settle, even as a storm rose inside me. I told myself it was nothing, two people sitting too near, a coincidence born of space. But deep down, I knew better. His eyes lingered too long, his hand rested too near, and my own refusal to retreat was not the act of a child seeking comfort but of someone teetering at the edge of a forbidden boundary. We spoke in fragments after that, half thoughts and evasions. "Do you ever feel lonely?" I asked, though I regretted it as soon as the words escaped. He glanced at me, expression shadowed. "More often than I admit." The reply landed like a confession, though not the kind I expected. It stripped away the last pretense of normalcy, leaving us both exposed. I wanted to argue, to say it wasn't right, that we should stop. But my voice betrayed me, trembling as I asked, "And tonight?" He didn't answer immediately. His silence became its own reply, stretching thin until it broke with the faintest touch, his hand sliding over mine, deliberate this time. My breath hitched, my pulse stuttered. A choice had been made, though neither of us spoke it aloud. I could have pulled away. That thought haunts me still. Instead, I let the warmth of his palm settle against mine, a seal on the unspoken pact we had just entered. The movie's static buzz filled the room, masking the enormity of what was happening. My chest burned with a mixture of terror and anticipation. Every moral line I'd ever been taught blurred in that moment, replaced by the undeniable truth of contact, closeness, and desire. He leaned closer, so near that I could feel the whisper of his breath. My skin prickled, my mind screamed warnings, yet my body betrayed me with stillness. No words were spoken when the final barrier broke. It didn't need words. The silence told the story, every unvoiced thought woven into the simple, dangerous fact, we had crossed a line. When it was done, when the silence returned, heavier than before, I couldn't look at him. My gaze fixed on the darkened screen, where my reflection trembled faintly in the glass. I didn't recognize the face looking back. I rose at last, legs unsteady. He didn't stop me, didn't speak. I left the room with the echo of his touch burning into my skin, knowing that nothing about my life would ever feel simple again. The hallway felt colder, longer, when I returned to my room. I shut the door softly behind me, but the barrier of wood and distance could not erase what had happened. My bed no longer felt safe. My walls no longer held me. I lay awake until morning, listening to the weight of my own breathing, replaying every moment. It had started as a movie. Now it was something else entirely, something I couldn't name aloud but couldn't deny. And even then, in those first fragile hours of dawn, I knew there would be no turning back. Morning light did not bring relief. It only sharpened the edges of the night before, laying everything bare in memory if not in appearance. When I came to the breakfast table, my mother was already pouring tea, humming softly as if nothing in the world had shifted. My father sat across from her, reading the newspaper with the same casual posture he always held. I studied his face, searching for some trace of guilt or recognition, but he remained composed, his eyes moving steadily across the page. It was as though the night had belonged only to me, as if what happened existed in a secret chamber of reality invisible to anyone else. Yet when he lifted his eyes and glanced at me, only for a second too long, I knew I had not imagined it. The silence between us at that table carried a new weight. From that day forward, ordinary life became a performance. My laughter with friends, my chatter with my mother, my studying at the desk, all of it cloaked the truth I carried. Each mundane moment became a fragile shell, beneath which the memory of the night thrummed, alive and insistent. And it did not stop at memory. Nights repeated themselves, sometimes with words, sometimes without. The secrecy grew roots, pulling us into stolen minutes and calculated glances. He would linger in the hallway when the house had gone quiet, and I would find myself listening for his steps, heart racing with anticipation I dared not confess. No one else seemed to notice. That invisibility was both a shield and a torment. At times I longed for someone to see through me, to drag the truth into daylight and end the spiral. Yet at the same time, the secrecy itself became intoxicating. The hidden nature of it, the quiet conspiracy between us, made the bond feel sharper, more consuming. What fascinated me most, though, was how it revealed something undeniably human. Animals act on instinct, they claim, they mate, they devour without shame. But we, humans, carry the curse and gift of conscience. We create rules, draw lines, vow fidelity, construct entire lives upon the pillars of morality. And when those pillars crack, the collapse echoes louder than any natural fall. I felt that duality every day. To others, I was the same as before, smiling, ordinary. Inside, I was fractured, torn between fear and desire. The guilt was suffocating, yet the pull was magnetic. It was as though I had stumbled into a forbidden chamber of the human soul, one I could neither exit nor explain. My father rarely spoke of it directly. His words stayed neutral, his tone calm, but his actions carried meanings that needed no language. A lingering hand on my shoulder, a pause too long when handing me something, the faintest smile in a crowded room, these became our code. And I, against reason, began to respond in kind. But the secrecy demanded vigilance. Every moment around others felt dangerous. A casual remark from my mother could send my heart pounding, as if she knew more than she let on. Every phone call, every sudden question felt like a trap waiting to snap shut. The tension became its own presence, following me like a shadow. At night, lying awake, I asked myself if this was love or illusion. Did I seek comfort, or had I simply been caught in the gravity of something forbidden? The answer shifted with each passing day, never solid, always blurred. One evening, when I hesitated before stepping into his room again, he looked at me and said quietly, "You know this is only ours. No one else would understand." The sentence echoed inside me long after. Only ours. A vow of secrecy, a claim, a chain. And though part of me longed to break free, another part accepted it, almost welcomed it. I sometimes wondered how long it could last. Secrets, after all, are fragile things. They fray, they leak, they shatter under the smallest pressure. Yet in those days, the weight of secrecy itself seemed eternal. I felt both destroyed by it and kept alive because of it. And so the hidden affair continued, not with grand declarations, not with open rebellion, but with quiet persistence. A look here, a touch there, the endless silence of complicity. It became a rhythm, a pattern, a second life carved beneath the first. I knew we were walking a path that could end only in ruin. Still, every step I took deeper into it felt inevitable, as if once begun, there was no possibility of turning back. Secrets cannot live forever. They may lie hidden for a time, buried beneath smiles and routines, but they pulse like a second heartbeat, waiting to betray themselves. I felt the pulse grow louder with each passing day. It began in subtle ways. My mother's eyes lingered longer when she asked simple questions. Did you sleep well? Carried a sharper edge than before. A misplaced object, a half-finished sentence, even the way my father avoided her gaze, each became a thread, and I feared she was starting to weave them together. Paranoia consumed me. At school, I struggled to concentrate. Every whisper between classmates sounded like accusation. At home, I rehearsed excuses in my mind for questions that had not yet been asked. Even my own reflection accused me. When I looked in the mirror, I no longer recognized the face staring back. It was someone older, heavier, marked by choices too large to bear. The weight grew unbearable the night my father reached for me with the same quiet confidence he always had, and I pulled away. He froze, confusion flickering across his face. For the first time, I saw the vulnerability in him, the doubt. He asked nothing, but the silence between us cut sharper than words. I realized then how far we had fallen, not just into secrecy, but into dependency. That night, I lay awake, unable to silence the voice inside me. Was this what I wanted? Or had I simply been trapped by it, drawn into something that felt powerful because it was forbidden? I thought of my mother asleep in her room, trusting, unaware. I thought of myself as I had been before that first night, restless, yes, but innocent still. The contrast was unbearable. The next morning, suspicion became reality. My mother asked directly, her voice steady, her eyes searching mine, "Is there something you need to tell me?" I froze. My throat burned with unshed words. My father, seated beside her, lowered his gaze, leaving me alone in the storm. In that instant, I understood the true cruelty of what we had done. It wasn't only betrayal of vows or roles, it was the destruction of trust, the foundation that held our family together. I wanted to confess, to let the truth out and end the suffocating secrecy. But my lips trembled, and the words never came. Instead, I shook my head, muttering some empty denial. She studied me a moment longer before letting the subject drop, though her silence told me she did not believe me. That moment marked the unraveling. The affair did not end in flames, nor in some dramatic revelation. It ended in silence, in avoidance, in a slow retreat from the very bond that once consumed me. We spoke less. We touched less. The distance grew, heavy with unspoken knowledge, until what remained was only memory. And in that silence, I confronted the truth. We had not discovered love, only a hunger disguised as it. What had felt intoxicating was not devotion but secrecy, the thrill of what should never have been. Stripped of that illusion, all that was left was regret. Humans are unique in this way. We create promises, design structures of fidelity, and then tremble beneath the weight of breaking them. No animal feels shame for instinct, no creature hides from its own hunger. But we do. We carry guilt like a second skin. And once worn, it never comes off. Years may pass, routines may resume, but memory clings. I still remember the hum of the television, the brush of his hand, the silence that became our language. These fragments return in the quiet hours of the night, reminders of the line we crossed and the cost we paid. Sometimes I wonder if the story could have ended differently, if I had risen from the bed that first night and walked back to my room. Perhaps then I would still recognize myself. Perhaps then trust would remain unbroken. But speculation changes nothing. The truth is simple, the movie was never finished. The screen went dark, but the story it sparked lived on, haunting me, reshaping me. It was a story without heroes, only humans, fallible, fragile, and bound by choices that define us long after they are made. And though I try to bury it, one memory always rises above the rest, the sound of silence in that room, heavier than words, binding us together even as it tore us apart.